The most important thing is to initially just raise awareness,
right?
Because people don't understand how badly they're being screwed by Wall Street. You know, and so it's like when we bailed out the banks, we were told that all of these bankers should still get their bonus checks because that was a contractual obligation. Oh, you have to do that, it's a contractual obligation.
Right.
Now, when firefighters, teachers, and police officers and airline pilots negotiate for pension and welfare, that's a contractual obligation. We don't refer to that as a contractual obligation anymore, we refer to that as an entitlement, as if it's something that they feel they're owed. Well, they are owed it because that's what they put in their contract.
And they also defer, or they got to reduce pay in order for those benefits, so that they're paid for in that way.
And you know, a lot of these companies, whether it's Verizon or, you know, state governments, they gambled with their pension programs. They invested in 401ks that were invested in mortgage-backed securities, which we now know was fraud. You know, it was fraudulent. It was fraud. It was illegal. And because of that gamble, the only way that we're being told we can deal with it is to reduce spending on a government level and not have our police, not have our firefighters, not have our...
Right. And I think that's basically the dialogue that people need to start having, because people, like you said, don't realize how much they're being screwed, in the sense that we have to break through all the PR bullshit to figure out what laws are actually being broken, like how deep does it go? Because I think that, like, most people don't know. It's like we just have a bunch of clips, you know, and we say corporate greed's got to go. That doesn't mean anything. What means something is like what kind of injustices are happening, what is really going on, what are the things that they're actually accountable for.
And the stuff in New York has only been happening for like 12 days, and already the media is like, well, what are their demands? What are their demands?
Right.
And it's like, well, the second you make demands, you're saying that this is a legitimate political system, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know, there's no voice anymore for the common citizen, so it's not a legitimate political system. And it's also like, well, after 12 days, it's not about what are your demands, it's about have you raised awareness?
Right.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And so talk to us in 24 days, and the answer is going to be, have we raised more awareness than we did, you know, 24 days ago? Yes. So
and also this drive to kind of cut everything down into sound bites of a particular demand or even a particular series of demands doesn't recognize that there can be a wide variety of demands that share a fundamental interconnection, which bring people to the street, that are not easily explained within a 2-minute news clip.
The OccupyWallStreet.org, they have now their sort of like list of demands, so to speak, and they're completely disparate. You know? I mean, everybody's got.
But that's okay, right? I mean, I think that's a viable political strategy. I think that the need to ask us for demands is a fundamental, you know, swipe at the knees of the movement in some way, which is to break down into something which is narrow and potentially dismissible, or upsurged within kind of liberal democracy, as opposed to a more radical structural engagement, which would have a variety of demands. You know,
one of the things we have to realize is that anything that's put out there media-wise, not by us, is going to be framed within that framework. You know, it's going to be basically reduced ad absurdum to some kind of what are their demands. It's going to be put into that sort of like box that, you know, we're trying to think outside of it, so to speak. So for us to like get the discourse, to raise the discourse, so that there's another voice there.
And also, part of it is just like you have to explain that, you know, when you talk about fraud, you talk about corruption, you talk about white collar crimes, it all sounds non-violent and somewhat harmless. And it's not. Corruption's a violent crime. Like, this isn't an expression of happiness, this is an expression of misery. And, you know, there's the statistic that for every 100 foreclosures in a given area, the suicide rate goes up by 34%. Okay? So you're seeing a very clear example of how corruption leads to foreclosures, leads to people not being able to get by, leads to them taking it out on themselves or their families. You know, through no fault of their own.
And not having any, and not having an alternative,
and not having
to deal with it.
Because they don't feel like they're going to be heard.